Jai Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasari Gauravakta Vrinda. As we're all aware of, or at least should be, the following orders were never followed. But, believe it or not, Krishna has kindly revealed to me how he amazingly plans on engaging some of us in executing these orders, despite the continuous refusal of the current GBC and all the other leaders of our otherwise extremely much more spectacular and amazing movement. Conversations with Srila Prabhupada, Volume 16, page 265, October 16th, 1975, in Johannesburg. Harikesh. How in the beginning? Let's say you have a king, Prabhupada. Beginning Krishna. Harikesh. No. Let's say you have a king, and he is deciding if this person is worthy of Prabhupada. No. Beginning Krishna. Why don't you read Bhagavad Gita? You don't know? Harikesh. No. Oh, yes. Prabhupada, what is that social arrangement? What is that? Harikesh. That Krishna created the four orders. Prabhupada. Yes. So you make that four orders, and then society will be in order. But you are not taking Krishna's advice. You are manufacturing your hellish ideas. Harikesh. No, I was just wondering how one would be able to see who was acting in a certain way unless they were first engaged in something. They have to be doing some activity. Prabhupada. No. Harikesh. So you can see what kind of quality they have. Prabhupada. No. Take everyone as rascal, then train them. That is wanted. Take everyone as rascal. There's no question that here is intelligent man, here is rascal, here is... No. First of all, take them all rascals, and then train them. That is wanted. That is wanted now. At the present moment, the whole world is full of rascals. Now, if they take to Krishna consciousness, select amongst them. Just like I am training. You are Brahmin by training. So one who is prepared to be trained as Brahmana, classify him into Brahmana. One is trained up as Kshatriya, classify him in this way. Chaturvanyam maya shrishtam. Harikesh. And that Kshatriya would engage everyone basically as Shudra and then pick from them. He would initially pick, Prabhupada, no. You pick up. You take the whole mass of people as Shudra, then Harikesh, pick out. Prabhupada, pick out, yeah. And the rest, who is neither Brahman, nor Kshatriya, nor Vaishya, then he is Shudra. That's all. Very easy thing. If he cannot be trained up as an engineer, then he remains as a common man. There is no force. This is the way of organizing society. Now, I very recently managed to contact Harikesh Prabhu here on Messenger, and the following conversation ensued. I, Gauranga Prema Dasa, said, "Please, Prabhu, tell me what you did regarding these instructions after they were imparted to you by Srila Prabhupada during that conversation you had with him." Harikesh Prabhu, I do not remember, but I'm sure you can figure it all out on your own. Gauranga Prema Dasa. Thank you for your expedient response, Prabhu. As far as I can ascertain, these instructions have never been followed by anybody, despite my intensely persistent endeavors to emphatically encourage the leaders of our movement for many years to do so. I figure if anyone had followed such massive instructions, it would be practically impossible for anybody to forget, what to speak of the one to whom they were originally imparted. I've never been able to figure out why they won't. I've also diligently attempted to inspire everybody who was ever willing to listen to me to cooperate with Krishna and Srila Prabhupada by becoming involved in a divinely inspired plan to implement these instructions with the creation of an independent ISKCON organization I've considered calling the Hare Krishna Hotel for the Homeless, Helpless, and Hungry, ISKCON Incorporated, wherein those willing to follow Srila Prabhupada's instructions will be welcome to do so, rather than becoming excommunicated as is the current status quo, and those opposed will not be accepted as authorities, regardless of the positions they currently claim and or are claimed to be qualified for. Please carefully examine the following presentation and kindly comment on it. It was about 2 o'clock in the morning, back in 1991, when all of a sudden I awoke from a very sound sleep. But instead of feeling groggy the way we usually do, I actually felt extremely enlivened, surcharged, and immediately inspired to write. I wasn't even really paying so much attention to what seemed to be frantically flowing out onto the paper. I was just inexplicably experiencing intense ecstasy. When I later went back and read what had been written, it occurred to me that I had just become the recipient of a divinely inspired plan for the initial phase of introducing and re-establishing Varnasrama Dharma. The idea that was verily revealed to me back in 1991 initially involves the establishment of a very opulent, self-sufficient, non-denominational, non-sectarian organization strategically located in densely populated cities like Los Angeles, New York, and San Francisco, wherein everybody without consideration of race, religion, caste, creed, marital status, or sex is cordially welcomed, individually interviewed, immediately analyzed, and based on propensities, potentials, skills, qualities, psychophysical makeup, nature, tendencies, and desires, tested to see which education in one of the 4 Varnas, occupational engagements they are most suited for, then trained, classified, then individually and collectively engaged either directly or indirectly in the service of the Supreme Personality and anybody who purely represents him perfectly. Harikesh Prabhu. Wow, very big vision. I hope that you find the answers to all that you seek. Your project is very intense and requires a lot of capital investment to start it, because you require very highly skilled people to do this work, maintain the center, and also to design and renovate the facility. This is something a very wealthy person can do, but not regular people. Gauranga Prema Dasa. Agreed. The blessings of Sri Lakshmi Devi is certainly an essential key. Of course, like Sanjaya said, wherever there is Krishna, and so on. And so because we'll be beginning with Krishna, like Srila Prabhupada said to you during that conversation I mentioned, we can rest assured that it's actually already happening, and that it's only the illusion of the passage of time that prevents our procession from witnessing it and the ever or eternally existing present. The way I see it, Krishna is going to create a formidable army out of the homeless, like it was done in the life of Adolf Hitler, to deal with the demon-crazy so-called system called democracy, starting with the rebellion of the devotees who oppose us and persist in refusing to follow the orders of the one they claim to be representing. And you're going to be involved in the inevitable rectification of ISKCON. Furthermore, There's nothing anybody can do to prevent it. Again, the way I see it, it's only an illusion that covers our perception of it happening in the eternally existent present. The government we're going to be engaged in destroying and replacing is going to substantially assist with the funding of it with various types of welfare benefits and engaging the homeless, as I've witnessed while frequently living in their company throughout my extensive North American continental journey, involving numerous movement banning, resulting in regular homeless sheltering. They can be in making large casting spiritual movies, which naturally will require the participation of all four classes of men and women, and will engage them in learning the art of individual and collective cooperative combat. The project will be further funded and maintained in extraordinary opulence, especially with the extremely pleased reciprocation of the all-powerful Supreme Personality. Yes, I am a madman. Not literally a man, of course. You know it's true. The most merciful, munificent, and magnanimous manifestation of God, often referred to as Gauranga Mahaprabhu, has kindly come to make us all madly in love with him. What can I say? Other than, Jai Haribo! All the way. The issue of the prerequisite involvement of Sri Krishna and his Lakshmi Devi reminds me of the following excerpt from a letter Srila Prabhupada wrote previously to all of the temple presidents. You can find this letter in the Prabhupada Lilamrita, Volume 6, page 232. The temple is managed by Srimati Radharani, Srila Prabhupada wrote, Lakshmi Ji. So why should there be want? Our philosophy is, if anybody comes, let him take prasad, chant Hare Krishna, and be happy. Everything is being supplied by Krishna. Krishna's not poor, so why should we deny them? This should be done at any cost. There is no difficulty. It simply requires nice management. If we believe that Krishna is providing for and maintaining everyone, then why should we be misers? This means losing faith in Krishna and thinking we are the doers and the suppliers. We are confident Krishna will supply. Let the whole world come. We can feed them. So please, do this nicely. Begin at once. In a very recent correspondence conversation I was engaged in via Facebook Messenger with Rameshwar Prabhu, who initiated me back in '83, I, Gauranga Prema Dasa, wrote, whenever any devotee doubts the importance, fantastic benefits, and or relevance of re-establishing Varnasrama Dharma in this age and or in our movement, I present to them or remind them of the passages I quoted during the following part of a Varnasrama Dharma introduction discussion I had with a devotee named Srila Prabhu. On 19th of October, 1998, Srila Prabhu wrote, anyone who claims there is some cheap, quick fix, automatic panacea is advocating a cheap way out. No real perfection comes cheaply. Any easy perfection is a cheap perfection. On 19 October 1998, I, Gauranga Prema Dasa, wrote in response, I quoted the book called Fortunate Souls from page 477. Excuse me. But if we accept the principle of Varna and Ashrama as they are recommended in the Shastra, and if we push on the Krishna consciousness movement in Delhi, Nandaji said that immediately these things cannot be introduced, but I think they can be introduced immediately, without any loss of time, provided you are serious about it. Srila Prabhupada letter to Prabhakar, May 31st, 1975. Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 9, Chapter 10, Text 53. When Lord Ramachandra, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, was the king of this world, all bodily and mental suffering, disease, old age, bereavement, lamentation, distress, fear, and fatigue were completely absent. There was even no death for those who did not want it. Purport. By His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami, Srila Prabhupada, a similar situation could be introduced immediately, even in this age of Kali. Srimad Bhagavatam, 9th Canto, 10th Chapter, Text 51, Purport. Among the four yugas, Satya, Treta, Dwapara, and Kali, the Kali Yuga is the worst. But if the process of Varnasrama Dharma is introduced, even in this age of Kali, the situation of Satya Yuga can be invoked. The Hare Krishna movement is meant for this purpose. Conversations with Srila Prabhupada, Volume 16, page 266, October 16th, 1975. Prabhupada. Now if they take to Krishna consciousness, select amongst them. So one who is prepared to be trained as Brahmana, classify him in the Brahmana. One is trained up a Kshatriya, classify him. In this way, Chaturvanyam Mayashishtam. Harikesh. And that Kshatriya would engage everyone basically as Shudra and then pick from them? He would initially pick? Prabhupada, no. You pick up. You take the whole mass of people as Shudra then. Harikesh, pick out. Prabhupada, pick out. And dressed who is neither Brahman nor Kshatriya nor Vaishya, then he is Shudra. That's all. Very easy thing. Conversations with Srila Prabhupada. Volume 7, page 301, 1974. Srila Prabhupada. So everywhere, in each center, this system should be introduced. And there must be practical application of Varnasrama. At the same time, this program of devotional service. Shikshamrita, Volume 3, page 2539. You must be very careful before you award the Brahminical thread by recommending a man to me. Now that we are dividing our society into 4 orders as much as possible, it is not that every man has to be made a Brahman after a year. Srila Prabhupada letter to Tredas, May 27, 1974. Conversations with Srila Prabhupada, Volume 7, page 302, for all of those who think that this is not for the Vaishnavas. Srila Prabhupada. Vaishnava is transcendental, but for proper management of the material world, one should be acting like a Brahmana. One should be acting like a Kshatriya. That is required. If need be, he has to act as Kshatriya or Shudra, it doesn't matter. But manage. For management, the division must be there. Otherwise, it will be mismanagement. Conversations with Srila Prabhupada. Volume 7, page 300, Srila Prabhupada. For the management of affairs, we require to divide. Those who are fit for management and protection, they should be trained as Kshatriya. So in our society, this division should be there. For some reason, which I've never been able to fathom, it appears that practically all the devotees nowadays are under the erroneous impression that re-establishing Varnasrama exclusively involves becoming self-sufficient by creating farm communities, wherein people are taught mostly farming and some other skills centered around self-sufficiency, maintaining themselves, even though Srila Prabhupada made it very clear that it's about so much more than that. As you may know or recall, he even asked why just farming business is so important, and explained that just like the stomach requires the head, the arms, and legs to function efficiently, the social body also requires all of its parts. One of the things I missed the most about the way the majority of the devotees were preaching up until the time period before you, again I'm writing these messages to Rameshwar Prabhu, went away. Or in other words, 86, yourself in 86, is the intensely exciting inspiration for a revolution that's aimed at ultimately saving everybody. Personally, my main focus of attention is based on one of my most favorite statements you ever made, which is that Srila Prabhupada made it very clear that he's come here to take over our government. Once, when I presented the divinely inspired plan I'm considering calling the Hare Krishna Hotel for the homeless and helpless and hungry ISKCON Incorporated to Jayapataka Maharaja, he retorted, when did Srila Prabhupada ever say we should involve the homeless by engaging them in that way? Which surprised me because he preaches so much about the Patita Pavana mood of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Later that day, believe it or not, I came across a Prabhupada pastime in one of Satsvarup Das Goswami's Prabhupada biography books, wherein he had just awoken from a dream and was very excited about a vision he had in it of a great assembly of drunkards, he called them, some of which were even chanting Hare Krishna. He was then asked if any of those who were chanting Hare Krishna would go back to being drunkards, to which he responded, no, because he explained they had already bought their ticket. Let's do this and make an old master much happier. The most simplistic simplification, synopsis, summarization that comes to mind is this. The petition and Hare Krishna Hotel parts of Prabhupada's plan are accumulation of manpower, identification, classification, and organization implementation measures, or steps if you will, to initiation of mobilization under the direction of the structural formation of the Varnasrama hierarchical system. Sri Sri Guru and Gauranga are personally the CEOs of, represented by the project's administration in consultation with Brahminical boards of advisors. Initial administrative objectives, and directives of the aforementioned planned ISKCON Incorporation organization, introduction and implementation of a self-sufficient, God-centered society exclusively under the authority of an independent governing system involving cooperation between urban and agrarian locations currently under the jurisdiction of the current demoniac government's so-called systems. For training, engagement, funding, security surveillance, and documentary movie production purposes. The entire process of implementation, including initiation of spiritual movie making requiring massive casting and military training, shall all be video recorded. Additional funding shall be acquired from donations and government benefits, i.e. Medi-Cal, Medicaid, Medicare, welfare, SSI, SSD, Section 8 housing, etc. And of course from Srila Prabhupada book distribution, Sankirtan. Initial funding for spearheading the project will be acquired from proceeds obtained by freely advertising on public access broadcasting. Upon completion of classification division organization, initial training, Kshatriya mobilization will begin. much in the same manner as deploying challenge horse armies, beginning in ISKCON. The next step depends on the reaction and response of the current ISKCON so-called managerial authorities. In consideration of the multitude of individuals involved in the project, naturally there will be practically an unlimited variety of details and engagements involved within the 4 classification categories, all revolving around ISKCON's public enlightenment endeavors. As the organization grows, the focus of attention will gradually shift from the successfully accomplished transformation of ISKCON, which will have attracted a lot of media attention by then, giving rise to widely broadcasted debates, inevitably stirring public emotion and eventually violent opposition to government transformation. Again, with God on our side, we can't help but win. All glories to Sri Sri Guru and Gauranga. Now, if you're thinking that adopting utilization of a petition plan for purposes of initiation of identification and unification of those of us willing to fight for what's right by cooperatively, combinedly, and therefore more effectively confronting the leaders of our society who've offensively been relentlessly refusing for more than 40 years to discontinue engaging devotees in what Srila Prabhupada referred to as their manufactured hellish ideas isn't productive, then pray tell, how in the world do you figure Srila Prabhupada's orders to organize our organization by duly classifying and dividing devotees will ever be implemented starting in ISKCON? Be sure not to exclude the essential Hare Krishna Hotel for the homeless, helpless, and hungry ISKCON Incorporated aspect of the plan from your calculation and your evaluation of the divinely inspired Varnasrama system re-implementation plan. All glories to Sri Sri Guru and Gauranga. Hare Krishna, Hari Bol. The Gauranga Prema's new Varnasrama Manifesto petition reads as follows. Important announcement. Dear Prabhujis and Genies, please accept my obeisances. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. All those interested in participation with Srila Prabhupada's plan for an ISKCON organization involving following all of his instructions with the inclusion of the ones contained in my Varnasrama System Implementation Information website entitled Gauranga Prema's New Varnasrama Manifesto, that there's a Google Docs link to herein near the top of this page, the petition page that is. Please kindly include your names in this petition next to the word website, located directly above the words important announcement. Again, that's where the website entitled Gauranga Prema's New Varnasrama Manifesto link is located. Bearing in mind that even the Supreme Personality, Sri Krishna himself, personally petitioned Duryodhana during an intermediary negotiation with a peaceful proposition prior to the Pandavas' proclamation, or in other words, declaration of revolution or war against him, his comrades, and his kinsmen. Hare Krishna, aspiring to be the sincere servant of the servants of the Supreme Personality, yours truly, Gauranga Prema Das. Hare Krishna. The following is the petition prepared for submission to the mismanagers of ISKCON. Attention, mismanagers of ISKCON. Per Srila Prabhupada's explicitly, emphatically, and persistently repeated orders for the implementation of the only God-given social and spiritual system of organization and protection, commonly referred to by followers of the scriptures, called the Vedas as Varnasrama Dharma, wherein all of its participants are properly trained, classified, and occupationally engaged in accordance with their natural tendencies, propensities, skills, qualities, psychophysical makeup, nature, and desires, either directly or indirectly in the service of God and His devotees. We, the undersigned, demand immediate discontinuance of disobedience, or in other words, malpractices of non-compliance, the ultimatum of resignation from your current positions because of your clearly endowed disqualification is your only other option, save and accept exceptionally unpleasant confrontation. Duly deliberate on this petition carefully and render the decision expediently. Hare Krishna! So again, the idea that was verily revealed to me back in 1991 initially involves the establishment of very opulent, self-sufficient residential organization facilities strategically located in America's most densely populated cities like Los Angeles, New York, and San Francisco, wherein everyone, without consideration of race, religion, caste, creed, marital status, or sex, etc., is cordially welcomed, individually interviewed, immediately thoroughly analyzed and based on propensities, potentials, skills, qualities, psychophysical makeup, nature, tendencies, and desires, tested to see which education they are most suited for in one of 4 occupational engagements, classified as 1, intellectual spiritual duties, 2, administrative type duties, comparable in some ways to the perverted reflection of government, military, police, and security occupations, responsible under the direction and guidance of God and those who truly represent Him, i.e. prophets, great sages, and saints, for organizing and protecting society. 3, business, farming, and mercantile duties. And 4, duties designated for those most happy and productive, being engaged in simple occupations, otherwise known as common labor, trained, then individually and collectively engaged either directly or indirectly in the service of the Supreme Personality. Some may consider this initial project, if you will, an experiment for testing the authenticity of the Lord's order and the intrinsic value of reestablishing the system consistently imparted by the Lord whenever any society submits to His will, involving a God-appointed saintly king, rather than a people, the majority of which in these days of Noah have practically no knowledge of or concern for the divinely imparted instructions of the Lord regarding organization, protection, and overall administration, elected president, who for all practical purposes has comparatively very little power to implement beneficial policies, having to constantly kowtow to Congress, who, rather than excluding God from every aspect of the judicial system under the guise of a so-called beneficial policy dictating the separation of church and state, is directed by God and those who are empowered by God to truly represent Him. Others will immediately or eventually, as the case may be, see, as has been shown to me, that in absolutely no way, shape, or form could such a project, which is solely based on the principle of adherence to the Lord's divine system of social and spiritual organization, possibly fail, and that no one within all the universe could ever so much as even come close to being able to stop such a fail-proof project from happening. Actually, it has already happened. as envisioned, and therefore it's only time that separates. Everyone from all walks of life, regardless of race, color, creed, or religion, age, sex, or marital status, psychophysical condition, or any other consideration of so-called qualification, will be more than welcome to participate in the Supreme Lord's divine system of cooperation and organization, which ultimately and inevitably uplifts each and every subtly and grossly embodied living entity to the highest level of spiritual realization, and eternally engages everyone in accordance with each individual's constitutional position with regards to his or her relationship with the Supreme in the spiritual occupation which is designated by the omnipresent Supreme Personality, therefore also residing in the hearts of all living entities, who is our ever well-wishing friend and master, dwelling and instructing from within, reveals our eternal spiritual occupational engagement, or in other words, the eternally divine manifestation of love, which is naturally exhibited by the performance of pure, unalloyed, unconditional, unadulterated, unmaterially motivated, loving devotional service, not only from within, but also from without, to the transparent via medium known as the external manifestation of God and referred to as the spiritual master, the scriptures and the saintly people who have appeared all throughout history, and is therefore the supremely tailored occupational activity desired by each and every living entity, who is the Savior of the most fallen. Therefore, anybody who thinks that the homeless, helpless, and hungry people of this presently hellish planet fit in this category will obviously see that such a plan as the one now being revealed is perfectly in line with the divine, loving, merciful, munificent, and magnanimous mood of our eternal Lord and Master. Our endeavor will not exactly be like shooting for a rhinoceros, so to speak, although to some it may appear to be so, because it has already been sanctioned by the Lord, the spiritual master, and many qualified saintly people. We can simply be, as stated previously by the Supreme Personality, instruments in the fight which has already been fought and won. History, as also stated previously, invariably and inevitably repeats itself. In many revealed scriptures we see all the elements which make up a perfect mystery, orchestrated by the Master of Mystery, once again the Supreme Personality, who is famous for his spiritual tendency to work in mysterious ways. In all of his pastimes, which of course includes the current one, we see intrigue, adventure, espionage, treason, fraud, corruption, deceit, misrepresentation, discrimination, reversals, and criminal activities of all types. As we can plainly see present before us, even within so-called religious societies, just as it was in the past, so also it will be in the future. There are so many corrupt so-called religious organizations on the planet at present that it will literally take many spectacular miracles to purify this place and reestablish the kingdom of God on earth as it is in heaven, as prophesied in the 11th chapter of Revelation. Yet although we can expect history to invariably repeat itself, we should and must also understand that there are some major improvements scheduled for the relatively or practically immediate near future as well. And this is how it's going to be done. When the thus revealed organization is established, the Lord and those sincerely devoted to Him will immediately have an entire army at their disposal. What to speak of an unlimited reservoir of manpower to be engaged in factually taking over the world and reestablishing the kingdom of God. At this point, if it's not, it should be and must be made clear that we are here to literally take over our government. And let me also inform any of you who still have any doubts about this, that God is still alive and well. And anyone who says otherwise, as stated previously, is obviously suffering from some sort of sixth sense of twisted logic and reasoning. We are inevitably going to be engaged and empowered by God in reestablishing God's system of government in the very place scoffers and fools claim we cannot. They have declared their independence of God and His system, and at present are claiming that His property, which of course includes every tract of land and every square inch of it, belongs to them. Based on this misconception, they have inaccurately assumed that God's representatives can, should, and therefore must be restricted by their laws from establishing the Lord's system of government, in which they have selfishly and rebelliously decided to call their jurisdiction. There is not one place at present on this presently God-forsaken planet that is not currently considered the property of people who have concocted one or another type of godless governing so-called system. This, of course, includes America, the so-called land of the free and the brave, where the motto is supposed to be, "In God we trust." A government system that boasts that the people of this land trust in God, but yet has excluded God from every aspect of the governing judicial system with the bogus implementation of the separation of church and state enactment, is fit to be abandoned, overthrown, and replaced. Anybody who walks down the filthy, disgusting streets of any downtown section of any major city in this so-called civilized country, what to speak of the others, can plainly see the result of such a godless system. Where there's so many people aimlessly wandering these streets when there's obviously so much that needs to be done. In order to facilitate the individual and collective development of love of God, this mess has to be cleaned up, and major corporations such as tobacco, liquor, gambling, abortion, and pornography industries, and empires, for example, all of which are also affiliated with demoniac manifestations of the hellish domains, will be completely, forcefully shut down expediently. This is obviously an absolute necessary requirement and a definite prerequisite for the complete reestablishment of the kingdom of God on earth. Those who claim that the land belongs to them and to have established their own systems of government will certainly object profusely to the establishment of God's divine government system on that which they claim is their property, which obviously belongs wholly and solely to the Supreme Personality, who has emphatically and boldly declared He is solely the supreme proprietor of all that exists, and the loving benefactor and ever well-wisher of all living entities. A person fully conscious of the Lord's true nature attains peace from all the pangs of material miseries. How will we accomplish all of this with our present limited supply of resources and manpower? Obviously, we won't. In order to completely accomplish that which the Lord has ordered, we have to become fully instrumental in cooperatively executing the will of the Lord, who in this way will kindly provide us with an entire army of individuals who, by force of circumstances, primarily due to the presently degraded, demoralizing, and demoniac system of so-called organization, have no choice but to find any place that offers food, which obviously must be extremely palatable and nutritious, as will be offered in the planned organization, appropriate occupational engagement, which, as mentioned previously, must either be directly or at least indirectly engaged individually and collectively in the service to the Supreme, who in turn is more than willing to provide an ample supply of amenities. The contention that most, if not all, homeless, helpless, and hungry human beings, who might, I remind you, are all embodied souls no less, that they are lazy, crazy, drug and alcohol addicted animals, has become a common fallacy, even amongst members of so-called religious communities. I have personally witnessed that in many cases, more often than not, it is primarily due to the absence of any reasonable opportunity made unavailable by the current so-called social system that so many people inevitably find themselves in so many situations which ultimately and inevitably appear to be quite hopeless, and not necessarily due to a lack of qualification, skills, previous training, or experience in any given particular field of experience. A good number of them are even actually quite intelligent, and many of them, and you'd be surprised how many, are naturally endowed with potentially powerful warrior qualities, and even more of them will make excellent, absolutely necessary members of the common laborer task force, who will easily be engaged in assisting the servants of God in ways we can't even imagine. This organization will also be an excellent place for any outcasts of various degraded parts of our so-called social and so-called spiritual, so-called system. Anyone who, for whatever reason, doesn't feel welcome anymore in such a decrepit, deluded, demoniac so-called civilization will be more than welcome to take up residence in and participate in this organization. The Lord, who all throughout history appears to annihilate the miscreants, protect those devoted to him, and re-establish the principles of religion, has appeared in the present age in his most merciful, magnanimous, and munificent manifestation, is killing the demoniac mentality of the quote-unquote people, and in this way is accomplishing the goals of his mission. However, we should not make the grave mistake of considering his followers pacifists simply because the demoniac people are initially just shown the stick, so to speak. When, and I do mean when, and not if, we are physically attacked, violence will unfortunately inevitably be necessary for protection of those dwelling in the newly established civilized communities. It is an unfortunate fact that violence is necessary in certain situations where good arguments fail. Of course, every possible measure will be adopted in the attempt to avoid any physical confrontation, and under God's direction, which must also be dictated and confirmed by the spiritual master, the scriptures, and saintly persons. Every method there is and is yet to come will be utilized in the emphatic attempt to prevent any form of conflict, what to speak of an all-out war. Obviously, the best war is the one that was avoided. The saintly kings are very careful about this. After all, they have to lead the battle and are considered cowards if they're not actually injured each and every day of the war. Let there be no mistake about it. War is inevitable in a society which is so attached to the horrible ways of this world. Those engaged in fruitive work solely for their own materialistic sense gratifications, which presently includes practically all the people of this world, have been rightly compared to the common hogs, dogs, camels, and asses who congregate for the purpose of electing the biggest ass to lead them. Because, like the animals, they are exclusively engaged in basically doing nothing more beneficial for their lives than attempting to satisfy their selfish bodily senses, and also is the basic principle of every common creature in simply eating, sleeping, mating, and defending, and therefore find practically or absolutely no time to utilize the God-given ability awarded to them in life for inquiring about the absolute truth. And so, instead of learning how to solve the problems of life in the material world, such as death, old age, and disease, and the miseries that inevitably accompany material existence, like mental distress and disease which come from the mind, miseries coming from the material body composed of blood, bone, urine, pus, bile, mucus, stool, skin, hair, and foul air, all nicely packaged in a perspiring bag of flesh that cannot contain all these foul substances which constantly ooze out of its orifices and pores that often leak a diluted form of urine, otherwise known as perspiration, coming from other living entities like mosquitoes, flies, rats, cockroaches, bees, and all other different kinds of bugs buzzing and crawling all over and under everyone's skin like spiders, and miseries imposed upon us by snakes, scorpions, and all other types of creepy, crawling maggots, and blood-sucking, pus-dwelling parasites, and animal flesh-eating carnivorous beasts, and of course the obnoxious people that have to be dealt with on a daily basis. Miseries caused by natural disturbances like earthquakes, floods, mudslides, tornadoes, tidal waves or tsunamis, excessive heat and cold, too much snow, rain, hail, and just plain old overcast, lousy, cloudy days, etc., etc., etc. These fools are constantly engaged in a vain attempt to become successful. And in order to become successful, which to them means satisfying the selfish senses, which are never satisfied, they often travel here to there on 4 wheels instead of 4 legs in what they commonly call a rat race for the survival and so-called happiness. But the more they get, the more they want, and we know that, and we all know that when dogs are gathered together in a kennel, there will always inevitably be strife or fights, just as there are always be contention, conflict, and confrontation in so-called human civilization made up of the 2-legged animals who only do just what the other animals do, but don't endeavor to utilize the God-given ability awarded in this life to awaken and develop the love of God, dormant in all of our hearts. At present, most people haven't a clue how dangerous this correct understanding of the principles incarnated by God is to the current conception of how we should be living our lives. It cannot be defeated. But at present, most people do not know this, and therefore they don't take us so seriously. There are some, however, who have declared that this mission is as powerful and dangerous as the movement apparently orchestrated by Adolf Hitler. Our mission cannot be stopped. And when the mass of people realize that this revelation, which dictates that we be literally instrumental in overthrowing all their demoniac social systems, which cannot be defeated, naturally they will retaliate. Due to envy of God, they will refuse to follow him. God is the supreme controller and enjoyer, and the people of this world are very envious of his position. People want to independently manipulate, control, and enjoy God's energies and resources. This tendency to imitate the position of the supreme controller and enjoyer can be easily witnessed by observing the mentality of the materialistic people who never endeavor for the perfection of life, or in other words, the development of love for God from the time of birth right up to the time of death. How many people want to know the purpose of life when they were born into this world? Can we honestly claim that we were initially inquisitive about why we are here and why we are suffering? No. We wanted a good education, a good job for acquiring a substantial income, a nice wife or husband, as the case may be, a car, a house, security, and ultimately what we consider success by material standards. And in order to achieve this, we persistently endeavor to manipulate the Lord's material energy in our attempt to imitate him by independently controlling and enjoying the Lord's energies and resources. Or in other words, lording it over the material nature, the material energy of the Lord. Anyone who thinks like this naturally claims false proprietorship over anything which appears to them to have some relationship with their body, which they consider to be the self, rather than understanding that the spirit soul within is the true self. They therefore think, for example, that this is my house, my car, my wife, my children, and my country. And anybody who interferes with their conception of what belongs to them is, of course, their enemy. This bodily conception of life can only cause anguish and strife. And anyone who is against others' beloved bodily conception of life becomes a target of their propaganda and other types of attack. We can certainly expect them to get upset about the fact that we are going to establish and enforce God's government system without their permission. When people in general realize how badly we are being cheated by the current leaders of society, there will be a revolution. If they had any idea what the Lord is doing with regards to me, or took me seriously, they surely would have tried to kill me a long time ago. We should not be in the least bit afraid of all of this, though, because God has made it perfectly clear that when we surrender to him, he protects us from all sinful reactions. Let us therefore not offer our submission to the so-called gods of this world, and let us continue to keep our faith in the one true God of gods. Rest assured, he will not let us down under any circumstance. Let us cooperate with him and his servants, and as repeatedly promised previously, spiritual peace, prosperity, and divine ecstasy will reign for all. As prophesied earlier in an autobiography, the people of this world who pride themselves in their ability to remain civilized during a debate, even when faced with overwhelming opposition, will initially attempt to defeat our correct understanding of the instructions of the Lord with mundane argument and reason, utilizing their modern technology. The initial stage of this was referred to in the manuscript as the computer wars, and as you can see, this has already begun. The Lord's instructions will obviously be a more popular subject in all forms of media, or become, rather, a more popular subject in all forms of the media. When the opponents of God and His ways realize that this correct understanding of these instructions quite literally cannot be defeated, they will, without a doubt, resort to other less civilized and conventional methods of retaliation. Then the children, being cultivated with this correct understanding, will become the prime target of this Antichrist propagandists, because they will not want any hope for the future of this revolution to continue, and they will deceptively be very sentimentally concerned on a purely mundane level or platform. This will naturally give rise to what I've decided to refer to as the mother's force, made up of those who naturally have a strong bond of affection for the children and an overwhelming, impelling inspiration and inclination to provide protection. It's all a natural sequence of events, and, as once again stated previously, history certainly does repeat itself. Many of us remember when so many of their sons were being mercilessly butchered during the Vietnam era or conflict, how the mothers gloriously united to provide protection for them with protests in so many forms of propaganda. Even presently, the children have again become an issue on the internet and throughout all the forms of public media, and right on schedule. Our beloved mothers have made their appearance all over the internet and other forms of media as well. The issue of women is much more important than many men think, because like they say, hell hath no fury like the wrath of a woman scorned. Of course, we are all spirit souls, but still, there is an obvious distinction of mind and body between sexes. I will not dwell on this subject, as it is now and will always continue to be a popular subject of strife and contention amongst those who are embodied and conditioned by the materialistic bodily concept of life. The initial phase of the Lord's plan will ultimately and inevitably take the world by surprise, even though it has all been spelled out for them, just as it was in the case of Hitler's presentation of Mein Kampf. Of course, this is a very crude example, but effective nonetheless. Most people, at least in the West, equate religion with some sort of philanthropic and altruistic activity, consisting primarily of acts revolving around conceptions based on mundane morality. Therefore, they will initially be very pleased with the altruistic welfare aspect of this plan, which will solve one of the biggest problems plaguing modern so-called civilization: homelessness. How happy they will be when the dirty, filthy, scum-dwelling, embodied spirit souls, mind you, of their streets, will be transformed into clean, law-abiding, according to the laws of God, that is, civilized citizens of God's kingdom. This organization, however, will not be just for the homeless, helpless, and hungry, but rather a place for anybody who wishes to experience a radical and substantial improvement of lifestyle as a result of participation in the Lord's divine system, which is a self-sustaining system that is more opulent than any system the people of this world have ever invented. The lowest class of people in this system live more opulently than the so-called highest class of people in any of the concocted systems of this world. It is said that a saintly king is held responsible and accountable for everything, and therefore, due to his cooperation with God, doesn't even have to tolerate bad weather for his citizens. What to speak of all the other problems that plague the members of other systems concocted by mental speculations. When the participants of this system experience the immediate improvement of lifestyle inevitably associated with the active adherence to the will of the Supreme, they will naturally become more inquisitive about the origin of this system, and the God-appointed representatives of the Lord will be more than happy to enlighten them further. In order to maintain complete self-sufficiency and further facilitate appropriate engagement for all classes of men and women, the city centers will be intimately united with farm projects. And you couldn't possibly have been thinking that all of the details of our mission are mentioned in the 11th chapter of Revelation. Of course, just as it has always been throughout history, whenever God directly intervenes, the opposing forces against the people of God always appear insurmountable. As a result of this, the power and glory of God is instigated and displayed as outlined in the 11th chapter of Revelation. The preceding details of the first phase of our mission presented thus herein have been thus revealed to me and are now being presented to you. Please deliberate on them carefully and duly decide what role you'll agree to be engaged in, for the mission is about to begin. All glories and victory to the Supreme Personality. Extremely interesting and intriguing Vedic prophecy and biblical correlation. Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 12, Chapter 2, Text 37 through 38. Devapi, the brother of Maharaj Santanu, and Maru, the descendant of Ikshwaku, both possess great mystic strength and are living even now in the village of Kalapa. At the end of the age of Kali, these two kings, having received instruction directly from the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Vasudeva, will return to human society and re-establish the eternal religion of man, characterized by the divisions of Varna and Ashrama, just as it was before. Current interim end of the Kali Yuga, commonly referred to as the 10,000-year reign of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Brahma Vaivarta Purana, Canto 4, Chapter 129, Text 59. For 10,000 years of Kali, such devotees of mine will fill the whole planet. After the departure of my devotees, there will only be one Varna, outcast. Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 9, Chapter 10, Text 51, Purport. Among the four yugas, Satya, Treta, Dwapara, and Kali, the Kali Yuga is the worst. But if the process of Varnasrama Dharma is introduced even in this age of Kali, the situation of Satya Yuga can be invoked. The Hare Krishna movement is meant for this purpose. Biblical correlation for the Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 12, Chapter 2, Text 37 through 38, passage posted above. The Holy Bible, New International Version, Revelation, Chapter 1, Chapter 11, Text 1. I was given a reed like a measuring rod, and was told, go and measure the temple of God, and the altar, and count the worshippers therein. But exclude the outer court, do not measure it, because it has been given to the Gentiles. They will trample on the holy city for 42 months. And I will give power to my 2 witnesses, and they will prophesy for 1,260 days, clothed in sackcloth. These are the 2 olive trees and the 2 lampstands that stand before the Lord of the earth. If anyone tries to harm them, fire comes from their mouths and devours their enemies. This is how anyone who wants to harm them must die. These men have power to shut up the sky so that it will rain not during the days of their prophesying. And they have power to turn the waters into blood, and to strike the earth with every plague as often as they want. Now when they shall have finished their testimony, the beast that comes up from the abyss will attack them, and overpower and kill them. Their bodies will lie in the street of the great city, which is figuratively called Sodom and Egypt, where also their Lord was crucified. For 3.5 days, men from every people, tribe, language, and nation will gaze on their bodies and refuse them burial. The inhabitants of the earth will gloat over them and will celebrate by sending each other gifts, because these 2 prophets had tormented those who live on the earth. But after the 3.5 days, a breath of life from God enters into their nostrils, and they stand upon their feet, and terror strikes those who saw them. Then they heard a loud voice from heaven saying to them, "Come up hither." And they went up to heaven in a cloud, while their enemies looked on. At that very hour there was a severe earthquake, and 1/10 of the city collapsed. 7,000 people were killed in the earthquake, and the survivors were terrified and gave glory to the God of heaven. The second woe was past. The third woe is coming soon. The 7th angel sounded his trumpet, and there were loud voices in heaven which said, "The kingdoms of this world have become the kingdom of our Lord and of his Christ, and he will reign." And the 24 elders who were seated on their thrones before God fell on their faces and worshipped God, saying, "We give thee thanks, O Lord God Almighty, the one who is and who was, because you have taken your great power and have begun to reign. The nations were angry, and your wrath has come. The time has come for judging the dead and rewarding your servants, the prophets, and your saints, and those who reverence your name, both small and great, and for destroying those who destroyed the earth." Then God's temple in heaven was opened, and within his temple was seen the ark of his covenant. And there came flashes of lightning, rumblings, peals of thunder, an earthquake, and a great hailstorm. Srila Prabhupada stated that Kshatriyas must be trained to fight with weapons in the modern day. He also stated that mysticism will be used. In a conversation with Rameshwar Prabhu, he said that this science is in fact not lost, but rather is still there in the Vedas, and that there will be those who will find it and become instrumental in using it for further development of our movement. Although many of you have heard this story before because it's transcendental or above and beyond the reality of our mundane plane of existence, and in this case completely spiritual, as explained elsewhere previously, it can be relished repeatedly. Once there was a guru who was brushing his teeth when all of a sudden a disciple came rushing in and said, "Gurudev, Gurudev, you will never guess what I have just seen. It was amazing. There was a man and he was flying in the sky. He was actually flying up in the air. Whoosh!" Now, as the disciple was carrying on like this, making a complete spectacle of himself, his Guru Maharaj simply continued to nonchalantly brush his teeth and eventually remarked rather casually, "This is not important." But Gurudev, did you actually hear what I had said? I I'm not making this up. He was flying. The disciple persisted. He insisted that this was a significant event in his life and continued to persist, yet all the while the Guru kept brushing his teeth, sometimes calmly and rationally interjecting that this was not at all important. After some time had passed, and even while the disciple was still carrying on like this, the Guru literally began to levitate and then flew all around the room. As he was actually floating in the air, the disciple, who was presently carrying on like a madman, then regained his senses and noticed that his Guru Maharaj was actually flying, just like the man he was formerly so impressed with. Naturally, his mouth suddenly dropped open. At this point, he was ready to listen. When the Guru descended back down to the ground, he explained that the important thing is devotion to God. This will bring about the greatest ecstasy and fulfill the purpose of life. The point is that mysticism is a material science, not so much unlike any other. Yogis are generally attracted to the byproducts of mystic power, for they can become smaller than the smallest, or greater than the greatest, achieve anything they desire, have power even to create a planet or bring anyone they like under their subjugation. This is a passage from the 3rd canto, 27th chapter, 30th text of the Srimad Bhagavatam, a purport that was written by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami, Srila Prabhupada. So to continue, it states, yogis who have incomplete information of the result of devotional service are attracted by these powers. But these powers are material. They have nothing to do with spiritual progress. As other material powers are created by the material energy, mystic yogic powers are also material. A perfect yogi's mind is not attracted by any material power, but is simply attracted by the unalloyed service to the Supreme Lord. For a devotee, the process of merging into the Brahman effulgence is considered to be hellish, and yogic power, or the preliminary perfection of yogic power, to be able to control the senses, is automatically achieved. As for elevation to higher planets, a devotee considers this to be simply hallucinatory. A devotee's attention is concentrated only upon the eternal loving service of the Lord, and therefore the power of death even has no influence over him. In such a devotional state, a perfect yogi can attain the status of immortal knowledge and bliss. However, according to the principles of what is known as Yukta Vairagya, which you may know means that anything which can be used in the service of the Lord should never be artificially renounced if it is properly utilized in the service of God under the guidance of, and this cannot be stressed enough, Guru, the spiritual masters in the line of disciplic succession, the Shastras, or revealed scriptures, and the sadhus, or saintly persons. Then it can be helpful for the progress of spreading Krishna consciousness, as Srila Prabhupada has pointed out. But it should be duly noted that he also stated it must only be used for this purpose. Just as sex is extremely dangerous unless it is utilized for its intended purpose, procreation of children meant to be raised in God, Krishna consciousness, and even the thought of it undoubtedly proves to be a great obstacle on the path of self-realization, the realization that the self or soul is an eternal spiritual part of the all-pervasive, or in other words, omnipresent Supreme Personality. Similarly, mysticism is so infatuating that one's fixed attention on the Supreme Lord and the determination for the performance of pure, unalloyed, unconditional, unmotivated, and uninterrupted loving devotional service can easily be deviated unless one is extremely careful. It is very common for the conditioned souls of the material cosmic manifestation to falsely consider themselves, or rather ourselves, the independent doers or controllers of that which is exclusively empowered by the Supreme Personality. We must always remember that Krishna, God, is the ability in man, and of course women, and that all actions of the material body are conducted by the Lord via the agency of the predominating deities of the three modes of material nature, known in the Sanskrit language as Sattva Guna, the mode of goodness, Rajoguna, the mode of passion, and Tamoguna, the mode of ignorance. On the other hand, if someone does acknowledge, accept, and verily embrace the control of our supreme, ever-well-wishing friend, Lord Sri Krishna, God, and is very careful not to become attached to the results, mysticism can and will be a very helpful tool for propagating the mission of Lord Sri Krishna Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, as it has always been in one way or another for those who are advanced enough not to mistake it for their own power. Jesus, for example, a pure devotee who is confirmed as such by Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Goswami Thakur Maharaja and His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada, used mysticism, or in what you might call modern Christian terminology, performed miracles for the purpose of attracting the attention of those who were so fallen that they would not appreciate anything he had to say without them. One of the potential pitfalls, however, to this method is that in addition to attracting the attention of sincere souls to the message of God, it may also allure cheap followers who are only interested in a mundane show of magic. If, however, the message is heard by sincere souls as a result of this method, then once again the principle of yukta vairagya has been successfully applied. Lord Shiva also adopts this method to attract the minds of very degraded personalities such as ghosts, who for whatever reason have decided to give up their gross material bodies, composed of the 5 gross elements which make up this material cosmic manifestation, known as earth, water, fire, air, and ether. For this reason he is known as Mahadeva, the greatest devotee. He is considered the most compassionate because he practically stops at nothing to save the most fallen, degraded souls from their deplorable condition. It's described in the Shastra scripture that he even wears garlands of live snakes and smears crematorium ashes all over his body to attract such filthy creatures who, like flies, are attracted to disgusting things. He even goes so far as smoking ganja, marijuana, with them. Why? So that they will become attracted and ultimately accept some authority. Lord Shiva has his own sampradaya, disciplic succession, which of course also began with God and is therefore a spiritual authority. So even if they simply accept him as just a great and powerful demigod and worship him for material benefit, because they have accepted a bona fide authority, they will gradually be elevated and will eventually come to understand that even Lord Shiva is not supreme. In other words, as they progress in their development, and become more enlightened by the influence of association with a Maha, or great devotee, they begin to understand that even he is worshiping someone, God, at which point he is more than happy to provide them with further enlightenment about the complete, absolutely true and direct path to the kingdom of God. After all, this was the only purpose for his unique approach, and ultimately this is the only purpose for any miracle. It should also be duly noted that no one should imitate the actions of great personalities like Lord Shiva. He once drank an entire ocean of poison for a very good cause. Everybody should be very careful with regards to this point. Who among us can drink an entire ocean of poison or lift a mountain, as did Lord when he appeared approximately 5,000 years ago in his original form, or in other words, the origin of all the Supreme Lord's forms known as Sri Krishna, for the protection of those who were depending on their mercy. Once Srila Prabhupada was asked, Swamiji, where are your miracles? At which point he simply pointed to some former hippies who were formerly Yavanas and or Malechas, those who follow no regulated religious principles, and are those who eat meat respectively, who had voluntarily adopted the exalted life of Vaishnavas, and as such had given up the four great pillars of sin. Or in other words, had given up the activities which include consumption of meat, fish, and eggs, or contribution to any form of unnecessary violence, illicit sex, which is sex outside of marriage, and not meant for the purpose of procreation and creating God, Krishna conscious children, gambling, which includes any form of speculation and intoxication, which even includes coffee, tea, and cigarettes, what to speak of marijuana, which so many of them were so mentally addicted to, and all the other drugs which simply alter one's perception of the absolute truth and cause the conditioned soul to become more susceptible to negative subtle influences like ghosts, and had begun the vowed practice of performing mantra meditational prayer, chanting and in this way glorifying and calling upon the name of the Supreme Lord, using a set of japamala beads similar to a Catholic rosary for a scheduled amount of time each day, approximately 1.5 to 2 hours, or however long it takes each individual to chant the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra, the great prayer for deliverance from attachment and resulting bondage to material existence. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. As for where one can learn more about spiritual mysticism, there are many passages in the Srimad Bhagavatam and the Bhagavad Gita which deal with this subject extensively and provide many illustrative examples, and which also refer to other passages located in sections of the Vedas like the Atharva Veda and the Dhanur Veda, which accurately provide a detailed description of the confidential and mystical science or art of conducting, or rather of being instrumental in the Lord's conducting celestial warfare. Please remember, though, that nothing should be read, studied, or done without the exclusive permission and guidance of Guru, Shastra, and Sadhu, the spiritual master, the scriptures, and the saints, and that the only purpose for mysticism in our modern movement is to further the cause of spreading Krishna or God consciousness. When Srila Prabhupada told Rameshwara Prabhu about the future of mysticism in our movement, Rameshwara Prabhu later explained to his followers that he initially became captivated and bewildered as his mind began to race out of control from one description found in the Srimad, the Bhagavatam, and the Bhagavad Gita to another, at which point Srila Prabhupada stopped him abruptly and pointed out that this will only be used for the development and mission of our movement, which is to awaken the dormant love of God in everyone without exception. This, just as in the case of anything stated by Guru, should not be minimized. However, who can possibly imagine what this means? Certainly, as explained previously, there will be a need for protection of the pious. And let us not forget that Lord Sri Krishna has personally appeared in the form of a sound vibration, his holy name, what to speak of his deity manifestation, and that Srila Prabhupada is still among us in the form of his murti, his books, his teachings, lecture tapes, videos, and is even, according to the Back to Godhead magazine, Harisari Prabhu's diary, in various places on the internet, reportedly appearing in people's devotees' dreams. Therefore, we are indeed witnessing a pastime, not unlike any other pastime of the Lord, where he is always accompanied by his eternal associates. And so remember, wherever there is Krishna, the master of all mystics, and wherever there is Arjuna, the supreme archer, who has kindly appeared in the pages of the Bhagavad Gita, which is now, thanks to the mercy, munificence, magnanimity, and compassion of the Lord Sri Krishna Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and his followers, like Srila Prabhupada, being distributed to every town and village throughout the world, there will also certainly be opulence, victory, extraordinary power, and morality. This is not just an opinion, it is a fact. Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 4, Chapter 23, Text 11, Purport. From the Narada Pancharatra, we understand that if one attains the stage of pure devotional service, he also attains all the opulences derived from fruitive activities, empirical, philosophical speculation, and mystic yoga practice, although he never engages in fruitive activities or empiric speculation to attain mystic powers. Automatically, mystic powers appear in his service. He does not have to endeavor for it. Science of Self-Realization, Chapter 2, Srila Prabhupada. Anyone can attain perfection within a second, providing he is willing. In Bhagavad Gita, Chapter 18, Text 66, Krishna says, Sarvadharman prityaja mammekang sharanang braja. Simply surrender unto me. We can do nothing, because Krishna is doing everything, so we can simply be but instruments in the fight. One of my favorite examples is that even the most insignificant instruments in the hands of the expert craftsman can be engaged in working wonders and performing miracles. All glories to Sri Sri Guru and Gauranga. Hare Krishna. Presentation of the petition, which I provided several links to on my Gauranga Prema Dasa Facebook page, is simply a necessary step in the proper direction. Like Krishna's petition for peace, knowing perfectly well that Duryodhana would flat out refuse to accept it. We're being engaged in representing Krishna, so that means we're expected to represent a direct part of his perfect arrangement to bring us all back to him as quickly as we're willing to return to his loving embrace. Therefore, every representation of his plan must conform to his standard, and apparently, one of his relevantly important instructions imparted by Srila Prabhupada is that we have established the International Society for Krishna Consciousness. Anyone who is trying to be aloof from this Krishna Consciousness Society and yet engage in Krishna consciousness is living in a great hallucination, for this is not possible. Srimad Bhagavatam, 4th Canto, Chapter 9, Text 11, Purport. We know that Srila Prabhupada was instructed by his spiritual master to do just what he did. But Srila Prabhupada never instructed his followers to start a non-ISKCON organization. How compliance with all of his instructions can and variably will be accomplished despite the appearance of overwhelming opposition, as it has always been in every one of Krishna's pastimes, is all spelled out in the plan that was revealed to me. Read all about it. Gauranga Prema's new Varnasrama manifesto, I provided a link to below this message. In the Bhagavad Gita, Chapter 3, Text 20, Purport, it is stated that violence is also necessary in a situation where good arguments fail. In a morning walk conversation on January 21st, 1976, Srila Prabhupada stated, "We are not nonviolent. We are violent to the mudas, the foolish asses." In a morning walk conversation on March 15th, 1974, in Vrindavan, India, Srila Prabhupada stated, "When there will be military march of Krishna-conscious soldiers, we have to kill this civilization of mudas, foolish asses. Those who are mudas, we have to kill them. This is our business. Kill all the mudas, not now, but later, when we are more powerful." Because Prabhupada's orders are being blatantly and offensively disobeyed, this is indubitably our duty. Srila Prabhupada letter to Niranjana, August 29th, 1972. "There is offensive behavior to the pure devotees. You may become like Nisringadeva and punish them severely." Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 4, Chapter 14, Text 32, Purport. One should not at any time tolerate blasphemy and insults against devotees. A pure devotee immediately becomes fiery with anger when he sees that Lord Vishnu or his devotees is insulted. This is the duty of a devotee. It is a great fault on his part if he remains silent when the Lord or his devotee is blasphemed. Please take into account that Krishna's instructions to Arjuna about abandonment of his teachers who committed abominable actions and have lost all sense of discrimination didn't mean that Krishna wanted him to abandon the battle by just establishing an independent kingdom and leaving them alone to continue doing what they're doing. All glories to Sri Sri Guru and Gauranga. Hare Krishna.